ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादि पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वञ्चाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्द। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Hare Krishna. Welcome to our fifth class on chapter 7 Śrimad Bhagavad Gītā. This is Jnana Vijnana Yoga or Vijnana Yoga, that is knowledge of the Absolute. So today we will start from verse number 16. As we discussed in our previous class, that this is a section from verse number 15 to verse number 19. And in the last class, we discussed verse number 15, where Bhagavan told about four kinds of miscreants. That is, we can say that who cannot surrender to the Lord. And in this particular verse, that is verse number 16, Bhagavan says about 4 kinds of Sukritinaha. That is 4 kinds of pious people who can surrender easily to the Supreme Lord. So first we will chant Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukritinorjuna arto jignasurartharthi jnani cha bharatarshava. Synonyms: Chatuvidha, 4 kinds of. Bhajante, render services. Mam, unto me. Janaha, persons. Sukrutinaha, those who are pious. Arjuna, O Arjuna. Artaha, the distressed. Jignasuhu, the inquisitive. Artha Arthi, one who desires, one who knows things as they are. Cha, also. Bharatarshava, O great one amongst the descendants of Bharata. Translation: O best among the Bharatas, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and who is searching for knowledge of the Absolute. So we see that Bhagavan says, Arjuna, there are 4 kinds of people who are pious, Sukritinaha. And who are they? The first one is Artaha. Artaha means who are in distress. He is Artaha. So the best example of Artha is Gajendra, that is the elephant devotee from the pages of Śrimad Bhagavatam. And then Bhagavan says the second category is Jignasu. Jignasu means the inquisitive, who wants to know about the Atma. So the example, Shaunakadi, rishis of Naimisharanya. Then is Artharthi. Artharthi means the desirer of wealth. Maybe wealth or in a broader spectrum, kingdom, any kind of accumulation, any kind of achievement we can say. So the best example is Dhruva Maharaja. Dhruva Maharaja. And the last one, that is Jnani. The best example is Shukadeva Maharaja and Chatushkumara. So we see that here, unlike the miscreants, these 4 kinds of pious people follow the regulative principles of the scriptures. So they are the Sukritinaha. They follow the rules and regulations of the scripture. They also follow the moral and social laws. And more or less, they are devoted to the Supreme Lord. So here we see we cannot say that they are pure devotees because they have some kind of aspiration to fulfill in exchange of the devotional service. But we know that pure devotional service is that which is without aspiration and without any desire for material gain. And in this connection, we know how Rupa Goswami writes in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, how he defines bhakti. He says, Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadyanavritam anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhakti ruttama. So here he beautifully defines bhakti as one should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably. That is anukulyena. Anukulyena Krishna anushilanam. And that is also without desire of material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculations. That is jnana karmadi anavritam. And he says that is bhakti ruttama. So that is called pure devotional service. So we see in this connection, there are 3 stages of bhakti. One is Guni Bhuta Bhakti, the second is Pradhani Bhuta Bhakti, and the third is Kevala Bhakti. Now, what is Guni Bhuta Bhakti? In this category, Bhakti element is the secondary element. Bhakti is the secondary element. So here we can see that it is Bhakti Mishra Karma or Bhakti Mishra Jnana or Bhakti Mishra Yoga, we can say. That is mixed with either Sakama Karma or Jnana, philosophical speculations, or Yoga, that is aspiration for siddhis. So we can see this in the karmis, jnanis and yogis for the attainment of bhukti, mukti and siddhi respectively. So they are bhuktikami, muktikami and siddhikami. So that is also a different form of material gain, mukti and siddhi. So that is why Guni Bhuta cannot be classed as bhakti at all in that sense. And the second is Pradhani Bhuta. In Pradhani Bhuta, bhakti is pradhana, that is the primary element. That is why it is Karma Mishra Bhakti, Jnana Mishra Bhakti, or Yoga Mishra Bhakti, we can say. And here the liberation in the form of Salokya is the result. And that is why no fall down is seen, that is from Svargaloka, that is Kshine Punya Martya Loke Vishanti. So as we can see for the Sakama Karmis, for the pious activities done by the Sakama Karmis, they attain Svargaloka and Kshine Punya Martya Lokam Vishanti. So when the results of the pious activities are exhausted, they again fall down to these earthly planets. And then we see the last one, that is Kevala Bhakti. This is the pure Bhakti, which is unmixed with Jnana, Karma and Yoga. And that is why it is also be called as Ananya Bhakti or Akinchana Bhakti or Uttama Bhakti or Avyabhicharini Bhakti. So here, what is the result? The result is association with the Lord in some primary rasa. That is, the 5 primary rasas are there, as we know: Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya, Vasalya, and Madhurya. So they can associate with the Lord by exchanging these primary rasas. So we see these 4 categories Bhagavan describes here: Artha, Jignasu, Artharthi, and Jnani, here in this verse. And next we will see, that is, in the next 3 verses, Bhagavan will continue to speak about only the last category, that is Jnani. Jnani. We will chant the verses first and then we will discuss. Tesham jnani nityayukta eka bhaktirvishishyate priyo hi jnani notyartham aham sacha mama priyaha. Synonyms: Tesham, out of them; Jnani, one in full knowledge; Nitya Yuktaha, always engaged; Eka, only; Bhaktihi, in devotional service; Visishyate, is special; Priyaha, very dear; He, certainly; Jnaninaha, to the person in knowledge; Atyartham, highly; Aham, I am; Saha, he; Cha, also; Mama, to me; Priyaha, dear. Translation: Of these, the one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best. For I am very dear to him and he is dear to me. Verse number 18. Udara sarva evaite jnane tatmaiva me matam astitasya hi yuktatma mame vanuttamam gatim. Synonyms: Udaraha, magnanimous; Sarve, all; Eva, certainly; Ete, these; Jnani, one who is in knowledge; two, but; Atma eva, just like myself; Me, my; Matam, opinion; Asthitaha, situated; Saha, he, certainly; Yukta Atma, engaged in devotional service; Mam, in me; Eva, certainly; Anuttamam, the highest; Gatim, destination. Translation: All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal. 19. Bahunang janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudevas sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabhaha. Synonyms: Bahunam, many; Janmanam, repeated births and deaths; Ante, after; Jnanavan, one who is in full knowledge; Mam, unto me; Prapadyante, surrenders, Vasudevaha, the personality of Godhead, Krishna, Sarvam, everything, Iti, thus, Saha, that, Maha Atma, great soul, Sudurlabhaha, very rare to see. Translation. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. So we see that Bhagavan actually praises the Jnani who can easily be elevated to a Kevala Bhakta, that is a pure Bhakta, Ananya Bhakta, and he also describes how he is loved by himself. So he says in verse number 17, we see there are very few, a few important words which are very significant. The first is here, Tesham Jnani Nitya Yukta. This Nitya Yukta is means during sadhana and in the stage of perfection. So that is continuously he is engaged in the devotional service. And Vishwanatha Chakrabarti Thakura says that he is absorbed in me constantly, Bhagavan says. He is absorbed in me constantly. And Baladeva Vidya Bhushana also says, having given up the desires of getting relief from suffering, getting wealth and getting knowledge, that is going one step ahead from Artharthi, Artha or Jignasu, getting knowledge of Atma, Jignasu, he is serving me constantly. He is serving me constantly. And then Ramanujacharya also says, attaining myself being the only goal, Jnani is ever with me. So the Jnani knows the constitutional position, that is, that he is the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and that is his only goal. So Jnani is always with the Supreme Lord, because in his remembrance, Lord is always present. So Nitya Smaranam is possible for him. And then Sridhara Swami also says that he has no bodily conception. He is already in perfect knowledge that he is the Atma and he is not the body, and he is eternally in the relationship of Sevya Sevaka with the Supreme Lord. And that is why he can fix the mind very easily at the lotus feet of the Lord. So that is why he can be engaged continuously. And the next important word is Eka Bhaktir Visishyate. Not mixed with anything. Not mixed with anything. Unmotivated devotion, as Baladeva Vidya Bhushana also mentions. As we already discussed, that for the arthas, when they are in distress, they want to remove that sorrow. That is why they surrender. And the artharthi, he is in desire of something. That is why for that material gain, he surrenders. And the inquisitive also, to some extent, to get the knowledge also, he surrenders. And as we discussed already, that moksha, that is also their desire. So mukti is also a kind of material desire, we can say. But Eka Bhaktir Visishyate means no, not mixed with anything, that is completely unmotivated devotion and engaged in pure devotional service. So this purity is very, very important here. So he constantly think about the Lord, as I said, Nitya Smaranam. So Atyartham is the next word, that is in the second line, Priyo hi jnanina Atyartham aham sacha mama priyaha. So this Atyartham is also very important. Atyartham means highly or excessively, that is, such kind of a person limits himself only to the love of God. That is, Bhagavan says, to love of me. They limits themselves only to love of me, as Baladeva Vidya Bhushana says. So I am the object of love for the Jnani, Bhagavan says. And that is why we see, as Bhagavan already promised in chapter 4, verse number 11, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tams tathaiva bhajamyaham. So here also Bhagavan continues that particular essence, what is said in chapter 4. In the next verse, we see in verse number 18. Okay, let me. Yes. So this verse number 18. Here Bhagavan says that Udaraha sarva evaite jnani tatmaiva me matam. So this jnani, atma eva me matam. This jnani is just like my atma, Bhagavan says. So I don't make any differentiation between myself and the self of that person. So that means how blissfully Bhagavan can embrace a pure devotee, that Bhagavan does not make any difference between his own self and the pure devotee. See, here and again in the next line we see that anuttamang gatim means the highest destination. So what is the highest destination? So when a person can associate with the Lord in his own abode, that is the highest destination, that is Goloka Vrindavana. So exchanging that the loving devotional service in any of the 5 rasas, that is the highest destination for a pure devotee. And Jnani, here as Bhagavan is continuing, so he is a real Jnani who is aware of his constitutional position, as we just mentioned. And in this connection, Bhagavan says this particular thing, that is Atma eva me matam. And a very similar verse we find in Śrimad Bhagavatam in Canto 9, chapter 4, verse number 68. Sadhavo hridayam mahyam sadhunam hridayam tvaham मदन्यत्तेन जानन्ति नाहं तेभ्यो मनागपि. So how beautiful. Sadhavo hridayam mahyam. Sadhunam hridayam tvaham. Madanyattena jananti naham tebhyo managapi. So the devotees are always in my heart, and I am always in the hearts of the devotees. The devotee does not know anything beyond me, and I also cannot forget the devotee. There is very intimate relationship between me and my pure devotees. Pure devotees in full knowledge are never out of spiritual touch, and therefore they are very much dear to me. So this spiritual touch is this. That is why Bhagavan is saying that I consider them as my Atma only. So what does it mean? As we also learned that when our Atma can be a real friend and when our Atma is our enemy. So when we actually understand the present or can feel the presence of Paramatma and can follow his dictations, follow his directions, absolutely, then our mind becomes our friend, as we learned in chapter 6. So that mind, which is always absorbed in the constant remembrance of the Lord, that can actually feel the presence continuously in the heart, presence of the Lord, Paramatma in the heart. And he can follow the directions of the Lord and always engaged in devotional service. So that is why here it is said that the spiritual touch is always there. And that is why Bhagavan also said that Atmaiva Mematam. So we see that we find a few points why this Jnani is very dear to the Lord and why he says that, O Arjuna, Jnani Bhakta is my favorite, the dear, my most dearest and the best. So we see the first point, he is in full knowledge and devoted without motives. Second point, he is safe in the devotional path and blemishless, as he is always thinking about the Lord. So he is safe in the devotional path because his knowledge is perfect, his mind is fixed, and he can always remember the Lord. Okay, number 3, material contamination cannot touch him. He is always in the spiritual touch, so material contamination cannot touch him. Number 4, he is not satisfied with dry mental speculations. Number 4 was it, that not satisfied with dry speculations. And number 5, he is able to surrender completely. And number 6, Lord is very, very dear to him. And that is why he is also very dear to the Lord. So these 6 points we will try to remember, okay? I am repeating. 1, he is in full knowledge and devoted without motives. Number 2, he is safe in the devotional path and blemishless, or taintless. Number 3, material contamination cannot touch him. Number 4, he is not satisfied with dry mental speculations. Number 5, he is able to surrender completely. And number 6, Lord is very dear to him. So he is also very dear to the Supreme Lord, as Bhagavan says himself. And then Bhagavan continues that, O Arjuna, this stage is not very easy to attain. It takes many, many lifetimes. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate. Vasudevas sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabhaha. So when a person can understand that Vasudeva is everything, as we are learning from the beginning of this chapter, how he is everything. So when a person is in complete knowledge that Vasudeva is everything, then he actually attain the highest level, that is Anuttamam Gatim, as Bhagavan described in the previous verse. And here we see why it takes time, because there are a few steps to becoming pure devotees. This Jnani, step by step, becomes a pure devotee. And that is why it takes many, many lifetimes. So, what are the steps I am saying? You please listen carefully. The first is detachment from material enjoyment. Number 2, inclined to impersonalism. When a person is detached from material enjoyment, he naturally becomes inclined to impersonalism, nirvisheshavada. That is, he believes in the nirakar form, that is formless nirakar rupam of the Supreme Truth. Number 3, further advancement. When he is continuing his spiritual elevation practices, so further advancement, how that we also learned that when a person is in knowledge, when he is detached, in 5th chapter and in 6th chapter we learned that when a person reaches the level of knowledge after from sacrifices, that is the culmination of sacrifices is the knowledge. 4, 5, 6 chapter, in these 3 chapters we learned. And then when a person is situated in perfect knowledge, then he starts meditating. And we also learned in chapter 6 that at the perfect stage of meditation, in the samadhi stage, a person becomes a bhakta. So that is why this further advancement, so many things is there in this particular point that we have to understand, specifically from chapter 5 and 6 we will have to get the essence. So further advancement is point number 3. And then point number 4 is, he then understands that material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. He then understands that there is a spiritual world, and a perverted reflection of that spiritual world is this material world. And that we will also learn when we will study Purushottama Yoga chapter 15, that is the inverted Ashvattha Vriksha, that we will learn. So then he understands this. And number 5 is understanding everything in relation to the Supreme Lord Vasudeva. And then he understands that Bhagavan is the source of everything. And as I said, that is a constitutional position, that I am the eternal servant. As a Jivatma, I am the eternal servant of the Supreme Lord. And Ishavasyam idam sarvam. So everything belongs to the Lord. So then he perfectly understands that everything is in relation to the Supreme Lord Vasudeva. Vasudeva sarvamiti. And number 6, understanding the action in spiritual life. So spiritual life does not mean renunciation of action. that also he understands. So then what happens? Point number 7, then he engages himself in devotional service, unalloyed devotional service. And then what happens? The last stage is complete surrender. Complete surrender, that is Atma Nivedana, Sharanagati. So these are the steps. That is why it takes time. It takes time. And Bhagavan says, such a pure soul is very rare. Very rare. But we see, if we get the association of a pure devotee, our advancement is triggered. Then it takes much less time to come to this highest platform. That is the purity of devotion, that is practicing pure devotional service. It is easy in that case. So we see that from this particular section, what we learned, that is the principles of pure devotional service. And what is that? Number 1 is complete surrender. And number 2, serving the Lord favorably under the guidance of bona fide spiritual master. That is the learning from this section for us, that we can apply in our personal life. Okay. So with this, we have completed this section. And in our next class, we will move on to the next section. कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम राम